Well, welcome. Tonight, we're going to meet people behind the scenes. Unless you've had to raise money or need help in the money side, you don't tend to see them. But whenever we need to dig deep, when we need support for our kids, for the causes around town, these are the people that quietly behind the scenes come through for us day in, day out. And when you need personal things like loans and service, these are the people who set the environment in our local banks that make it easier to live in the center of the universe here at Milford. So let's start with an introduction.
Hi, my name is Alan Villatoro. I'm Vice President with Unibank.
I'm Patty Barr. I'm the Assistant Vice President Branch Administrator for Milford Federal.
And I'm Michael Carroll. I'm with Dean Bank. I'm their Senior Vice President of Marketing and Public Relations.
I'm Ann Sherry, Senior Vice President of Customer Care and Relationship Development at Charles River Bank.
Now, why don't we start with, tell me about your bank and what makes it special. That should be an easy intro.
Sure. Unibank has been around for about 149 years, believe it or not, when the early seeds were first set for the bank. What makes us special? We focus on our core values, which include teamwork, integrity, and excellence in the delivery of service that we provide to our customers on a daily basis. So those are really the three major focus points that we bring to the table every time we have a customer interaction or a new potential client.
So Milford Federal is a community bank, one of the last standing local banks on Main Street. We do surround ourselves around community, and we base all of our services around the customer's needs, not what the bank needs.
And you've been around Milford quite a long time.
Yes.
Because I remember 45 years ago.
We've been there 132 years.
Well, I haven't been. But I remember it was 50 years ago. I think I was 10 or 11 years old when they came to the school. Back then, they still had those things called bank books. And you could put your $1 in, and they stamped your bank book. And to this day, I still have my accounts at Milford Federal.
We still have passbooks. A lot of banks are discontinuing
Really?
them, but we still have passbooks.
I didn't know those existed.
Yeah.
And we have passbooks as well. Though we'll say decreasing in popularity, they still are there, and we continue to maintain the machines and have them service in the event and when the event that a customer who still maintains a passbook needs to perform a transaction on it. But Dean Bank has also been in the community, though not directly in the Milford community, certainly in the surrounding communities.
It was your next door Franklin.
We are next door in Franklin, yes, since 1889. Is when Dean Bank first opens its doors adjacent to Dean College. We have 4 branches. We are, as you said, in Franklin. We're in Bellingham, Blackstone, and Mendon as well. And I'm going to echo the sentiments already heard so far. Community banks in general don't have the size or the economy of scale of the larger institutions. So our differentiator at Dean Bank is really a commitment to service. We need to make sure that we are delivering the highest level of service with each and every customer interaction, no matter where they're interacting with us. And I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but whether that's in the branch or certainly in the online or mobile, nowadays in the mobile environment as well.
Miss Ann.
Al, so I think what sets Charles River Bank apart is how we value our customer stories. Everyone has their own individual story, whether you're a business owner or whether you're a new parent or a grandparent or getting ready to retire or trying to buy a new house. We really try to understand what's happening in your world and try to provide the solution that's going to be best for you in terms of your finances. We serve the community. We have 4 offices. We are headquartered in Medway. We were founded in Medway more than 100 years ago. We have an office in Mendon, and we have an office on the Bellingham-Franklin line, and we also operate a branch out of Medway High School. So, I think everyone touched on the community. We are all very involved in the community and very committed to the community. But, I think it's really that commitment to understand the uniqueness of every person that comes in. You know, you're not going to have to call an 800 number to get customer service. You will have the direct line for the person that's, you know, you opened your account with, they'll give you their direct line phone number to their office. Those are the kind of things that set us apart. You can talk to real people who live and work in your community if you have any questions or issues, and I think those are the kinds of things that set us apart.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever called the bank and had somebody ask me, what's the weather like out there? You know, and then I realized I was calling South Dakota or something for Citibank, or,
Call centers, sure.
you know, it's like, okay, that's not really anybody I would know.
And sometimes they're not even in this country, the call centers, so it can be very frustrating when people don't really understand what you're going through.
Now, fundamental question. Why would I bank with a community bank? Somebody want to take that?
Well, community banks, you know, reinvest in the communities that we work in. I think a lot of my colleagues here touched upon the fact that many of us live and work in the communities that we support. We volunteer in those communities, so we give back not just monetarily, but also through self-service, you know, providing assistance through charities, donations, supporting local sports teams, a number of different ways in which the community banks really give back to the communities that they are doing business in. Everything from, you know, helping out a small business owner trying to get their feet, you know, on the ground, and you know, even as far as some older businesses that are looking for ideas and assistance from people that live in the town that they're, you know, doing business in.
What he said.
What he said.
I also think the other thing with us too is, you know, a lot of us, our banks volunteer, and they volunteer in the community, but we do it because we want to. It's not because the bank says we have to do it. It's something that we have to do. We do it because we want to. Some of us are on, you know, we're on boards for different nonprofits and things like that because it's what we enjoy, and we go out there and we know we're not only ourselves, but we're also representing the bank because we think it's important.
You know, it's funny you say that, because every once in a while, I mean, it's not just banking. We saw Comcast, that they'll put together once a year. You know, so you'll see one of the big banks come to Milford to do an event. And I sat there and said, that's really nice, I guess. Where are they the other 364 days?
Right.
Right. They're not sponsoring your child's softball team or, you know, working with the Girl Scouts to help them earn their badges.
And I mean, that's something, because we sure remember the banks when it comes down to sponsoring the shirts on the backs of our kids for Little League.
Of course.
You know, or any other thing. I mean, you know, the first place I think they all go is you all. They come and visit your banks.
Right.
I can tell you that in my job, in my role, I'm the person responsible for bringing in and compiling all the donation requests, the event sponsorship requests, and on a monthly basis. Typically, the amount of dollars that I'm receiving in for requests is about twice what my monthly budget is. So we try to do as much as we can, whenever we can, for as many people as we can. Because you're right, the community do think of the community banks for those types of things. You know, you always hear stories or you read surveys that the service levels at community banks are percentage points higher than some of the larger banks. But yet, the challenge for us, and it's an uphill challenge, despite all of that data, that people are more satisfied at a community bank and we are more responsive to the community, those large banks, and I could say that I'm sure all your viewers are thinking who they are right now. Just in Massachusetts alone last year, the largest one grew by more than $1 billion in deposits.
Really?
So it's an uphill, and that's fine. Their business model may lend itself maybe to more commercial, but even that aside, they are still consumers because of the ease and convenience and the economies of scale that are presented with some of those larger banks. It is a challenge for the community banks to grow and to thrive, but we do.
But now, realistically, I've got my little $100, and I'm going to put it in Citibank or Bank of America because I have better access to it, right?
No.
So you think?
No.
Well,
Maybe that was the case
right. It's a
before.
common misconception.
Many
Right.
people believe that.
Well, my father, to the day, believed that when he walked in, on whatever it was, Main Street, 246, whatever it is, there was a vault, and he could see it, and it was full
With
of
the
little
little drawer,
boxes,
with the little
and the
drawer.
little drawer, and he was convinced that when he brought his $10 in,
That's where we put it.
they went to his drawer and put his money in there, and then anytime he needed it, he could go and open his drawer and get his money out. So it's got to be easier to do one of these gigundo banks because they give you easier access.
And again, people believe that, but I think one of the reasons people really should consider doing business with, a community bank, one of the banks here in this room, with Charles River Bank, with whatever community bank you choose, is because we can offer that. It's almost like a perfect combination of technology, service solutions for you, and the personal touch that you're just not going to get at a big bank. Like, we care about every person that walks in that door, and we're concerned about what the experience they have because they're part of the community. And our reputations are, I don't want to say are at risk, but we have to worry about what the community thinks of us. Some of the bigger banks don't. But in the meantime, you still have access to all the technology solutions that you need. So whether it's, you're out to dinner and you want to transfer money over to you electronically, we can do that for you. If you have a check and you can't get to the bank and you need to take a picture of it to deposit it, we can do all those things. You can pay your bills electronically. You can, use your debit card at millions of locations around the world. All of those things are there.
Right.
And so it's kind of the best combination as to, why would someone want to do business
Well,
with a
now that's
community
always
bank?
one thing that comes up because if I'm going to have an ATM card or a debit card, then I want to know, because I've gotten stuck sometimes way back when I used, and the Bank of America seemed to be everywhere. And they would be happy to let me use their machine. And it cost me $3.
Sure.
I learned very early on that this was not something I wanted to do very often. How do I get money out of my local bank?
Well, I can say that the challenge, that the playing field has really been leveled. Financial technology, or that the buzzword is fintech. Financial technology has really leveled that playing field. There are, as Ann was saying, there are so many options now available to the consumer and through the community banks.
But Mike, I don't see Dean Bank, whatever you call them, ATM machines or kiosks everywhere.
But again, we don't need to have them. There's a variety of ways around that. We have a checking account that rebates those fees, so you don't have to worry about it. If you get a $3 fee, if you're in that particular account, that $3 will be credited back to you the next business day.
For some reason, I open up my wallet, and I have two wonderfully ungrateful offspring who I love dearly, and somehow there was money in it last night. It's empty now. So I need to get my hands on cash. How do I find a Medway? I can't call it Medway Co-op anymore. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
There's too many
I'm
years
proud
of
of that.
too many years of remembering.
That's fine.
But Charles River or Milford Fed. How do I find an ATM machine?
Well, a lot of us we're part of different networks, like some Presto, Nice.
Like that Cirrus thing and
Exactly. And all of us, if you go on our website, you can actually click on, for us, I know at Milford Federal, you can click on a link, say where you are, and they'll tell you what banks you can use for that. And I just want to go back to one thing, too, talking about the local banks. I love when Ann says, we know your story. And one of the great stories I have to share is right now it's school vacation. Parents are excited, teachers are excited, everyone's gone on vacation. One of the important things they forget to do is give us a travel advisory. Let us know that they're going somewhere different than around in the Milford area. So when they go to use their debit card, it's not going to work because they haven't notified the bank that they're in a different location. And for security reasons, we get concerned, and sometimes if we can't get in touch with them, we will lock down their card. So they can call any of us sitting in this room because we're local. We have people where we can just call upstairs or call somewhere and say, I just talked to the customer that's traveling, can you just unblock their card so they can use it? Try to do that with some of the bigger banks and you're going to make about, 5 phone calls before someone will actually
Or,
unblock that
or
card
sit
for
through
you.
multiple minutes going
Right.
through
Right.
that
Sitting
menu
and
on the
waiting.
phone to get to
You mean
the.
the people in the Philippines don't know who I am?
No.
No.
But that's a differentiator for us because we're able to do that so quickly, whereas the other big banks are. I have one account at a big bank, and my husband and I traveled on vacation, and I forgot, being a banker, forgot to let them know to use the card, and it was painful to try to get my card unblocked to the point where I just said forget it and used a credit card.
Well, I'll never forget many years ago when for some reason my paycheck started being deposited into my father's account. And I was in Moscow, and I got a call from my darling bride saying, "Bank called, you're bouncing checks." And I said, "It can't be." Well, Alberto F. Correa somehow got confused with Alberto A. Correa, even just because we lived at the same address and the same. So I was a little nervous.
Right.
And I called back to Milford, to my local bank, and I didn't have security. Tina Mafia said, "Hi, Al." And I said, "Here's my problem." She goes, "Don't worry about it. We won't bounce any checks. When you get back from Moscow, we'll figure it out." Boy, that was a lot better than trying to, what was my first dog and what cat ate my homework and 5th grade passwords.
It's interesting because we do have to keep a log when people call us or contact us to, let's say they need something and we need to identify them. It's amazing when you review the logs how many people know the customer personally and recognize their voice. Like we know it's you because not only do we recognize your voice, but we can talk to you about what you were just talking with us about last week.
Right.
So you don't have to go through the press 29 buttons. Occasionally a person will call, someone answers the phone who doesn't know that particular customer, and we do obviously have to ask security
Sure.
questions, but it truly is amazing how many times
Yeah, well, after
people
40
know the
years, if
customer
Maria
that they're
doesn't know
speaking
it's
with
me,
personally.
I got a real problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Now, if you look at coverage, though, straight question. Are there as many ATM machines around? I mean, is there enough that I'm not going to have to run around the city finding one that my local bank uses?
There are so many networks that we belong to. Basically, your card can work at any ATM that you come across. But the other reality is, when we have customers that have concerns about this, and you really sit down and ask them how they use their card, they don't actually, a lot of people don't use cash anymore. Like they're worried about getting that ATM.
It's the
But the-
idea
yeah,
of
it's
having
the idea- yes.
enough ATMs, even though it's been 6 months since they last
Actually
used
use
one.
an
The reality is most people are using their debit cards to just purchase the items directly wherever they're buying them. So they don't need the cash. They can just
Now, help
purchase
me
with their debit
understand.
card, and you can get cash back at any grocery store.
Why do I want
at so
a
many
debit
places.
card? I'm always confused. I have a credit card, and I use it, and I don't have to pay for anything for 3.5 weeks.
Yep.
What is the advantage of a debit card? It seems like I use it, you're going to take my money right away.
And we are. And some people need that for budgeting purposes. Some people, they just prefer to, that's just how they prefer to, purchase
So it's
the
essentially
services
like
and
cash.
goods that they need. It is essentially like using cash, except you're not using cash, but you're using your debit card, but it comes out of your account that way. But certainly, the credit cards that we all offer will help you earn rewards
now,
and,
on the
and
debit
let
card,
you use it, for
Is it like my savings or checking account that I can only spend what's in it?
Correct. Yeah, I mean, most banks will offer some kind of a backup plan in the form of an overdraft protection of some sort. Depending on what you're looking for, most banks are able to meet that need. But essentially, what you're using when you're using your debit card is the funds available in your checking account. It's basically replaced a check in today's environment.
Yeah, I don't use many checks anymore.
Right.
I think most of the stuff now is direct, except for National Grid. They want to charge me $2.60 for using my credit card. So I said, okay, fine, I'll write a check every time.
Or you could just, if you have online banking, use your own online banking and set up the payments, and it won't cost you anything.
Now, my
Do it
local
that way.
banks do all that good stuff?
Of course we do.
Absolutely.
No, I mean,
Of course
Absolutely.
we do.
Yeah.
the image that, those other little banks like Bank of America or Citibank want to portray is that they have so many more services, and they offer you so much more. How true is that?
I would say it's not very true at all. Speaking for Dean Bank specifically, our CEO's passion is making sure that we offer all of the products and services that are available right now today at any of the larger banks. So Ann was touching on a few minutes ago, using your mobile device, your phone, to snap a photograph of that check that you just received and depositing that right from your couch, your living room couch. We have that. The ability nowadays, there are a lot of payment systems out there that you can make person-to-person payments very easily through technology. We have all of those. We're about to launch where we can move money between account to account, even if that other account is at another bank.
Oh.
So
And we've
moving
had-
money,
and it makes it's so convenient for Mike.
it's empowering.
It's empowering for customers to know that no matter where they are or what they do, they can move money anywhere.
Right.
So they could have accounts with both of our banks. They theoretically could have an account at a big bank and us, and they can. It's so easy.
We see it because in Franklin, as you probably know, we're neighbors with Dean College. Dean College over the last, let's say, 10 or 12 years has really shifted from the majority of the students where they used to be local, so Massachusetts, New England, if you will. They're drawing a lot now more from Southern Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, a lot of students,
wow.
now that they're a four-year university. So you have a lot of students that are coming in each September, seeing the Dean College, Dean Bank, and wanting the mom and dad wanting to make sure, yeah, we'd like our child to have an account here, but we want to be able to move money into that account. So that's one of the things that we've been working on this year, is to launch that account to account.
That's a novel idea. My children somehow seem to be more adept at this than me because their credit cards seem to flow right to me very quickly for payment.
Yikes.
You know, they seem to know that exchange things. I did complain once to my youngest saying, you realize that your spending rate is greater than your generating rate. So she fixed it. Now she has all her credit cards billed directly to me.
That's a great solution.
It is for her.
It
My
is for
kids, I
her.
don't think my children would get away with that. But you know, the other thing is in terms of the commercial banks, where people maybe aren't aware of the services that the community banks can offer, is to the small business owners in the area. You know, whether it's lending needs or cash management needs. So you know, our business customers might, you know, have ACH where they debit, if it's, you know, a gym and they're debiting their members' accounts, or doing payroll, or they, you know, need to send out wires, or whatever, you know, whatever services they need. We have those, all of those electronic banking solutions. We have all the lending solutions for them, whether they're trying to buy a piece of equipment or buy land and build a building to operate. You know, lines of credit to get them through seasonal
Let me just take you back,
needs.
because I want to go there. So now, you're saying that my debit card is essentially like writing a check, only I don't have to write the check.
Correct, yeah?
Yes. And as a matter of fact, young people today don't necessarily call it a checking account. You'll hear more and more young people calling it their debit account.
Their debit account.
Because they don't use checks. There's no
Now,
need for
does
them.
it cost you more? Because, I mean, I got to pay to make checks.
Who
I
is
gotta-
you in this scenario? The customer?
Yeah. Does it cost customers more to reach for a debit card than a check?
Not one
No.
penny
No.
more.
Swipe it the same way as any other.
So you're absorbing
Write
the
a
cost,
check, swipe your card, it's the same.
but the bank's paying more to keep the customer then. Somebody's paying for, I mean, it's got to be more efficient to electronically process a purchase than to write a check.
There's a number of different ways that banks are trying to find convenience methods for their customers. I think we've touched upon a couple of them. You've touched upon the empathy that you receive from local community banks and the ability to know their customers. I think when you look at service in general, you touch upon a number of different aspects of it, and they include the assurance that your bank has the ability to meet the needs that you're trying to accomplish for services. There's a reliability and responsiveness aspect of it that I think as community banks, we really try to focus on that. So the debit card aspect of it, if it allows our customers the ease of use of functioning and using their funds to operate on a day-to-day basis, I think what you're going to find is that most banks are happy to do that so long as they maintain the relationships, because at the end of the day, those relationships are highly valuable, because throughout your life you're going to need some kind of a bank or an institution. And wouldn't it be nice if, in your case, you just mentioned you've had that account for
45 years.
Wouldn't it be nice if you could always call the local institution that you've been with, that knows you, that has the technology to meet your needs? That's really what a lot of institutions strive for, is meeting those needs of our customers.
Now, you started talking about local businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm a local businessman. I own a hardware store or, a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a big deal to me.
Mhm.
It's my life.
Sweat and blood.
It's a big deal to us.
I was going to say,
Big deal
because
to all of us.
when I look at one of those big New York City banks, I bet if they looked up how much I've done with my local bank, that's 1/10,000th of 100th of 1% of what they care about.
Right.
But as a local businessman, how would I even go to a huge bank and try? I mean, I want a little loan. Now, to me, that's a big loan.
Right.
If I want to get my business going or I want to expand,
Mm-hmm.
is it just my impression, or is it a lot easier to deal with local banks?
Well, this is the thing. Small local businesses, their big thing is buy local. They want you to buy local. They want you to deal with them. We want you to buy local. We're a small business. We're small businessmen. So I think we understand their pains. We need to grow. They need to grow. We're dealing with bigger competitors. They're dealing with bigger competitors. So, and we want to deal with the small business. A lot of the bigger banks, the bigger they get, it's almost like they don't want to deal with the smaller businesses.
And they don't. Sometimes they will put in place loan limits, for instance, where you don't actually get to even have a loan officer unless your loan is, $500,000 or more. Or
Oh,
$2
you don't
million
mean a
or
loan
more.
being so big they can't.
No, we're
You're
talking
saying
about
small.
Right. That to the bigger banks, you're not
Wait a minute,
worth the time.
500,000.
that-
She's using that as an example,
But I
but,
mean-
It's
but some
true.
lines, absolutely, some institutions whose typical loan size is 5 million plus, whatever that may be, they're not going to, I don't want to say waste the time, but it's
But
certainly.
Michael, how many, sorry,
No,
but wait a
no,
minute.
please.
How many people in Milford, in our little town, go and borrow $5 million regularly?
There are a few.
A few.
Sure,
There's
I would
some.
say it's a smaller percentage, but there are certainly some, and yeah. But let's get back to what Patty was saying a few minutes ago. That the sweet spot, if you will, the hardware store, they're going to have a much easier and a much more pleasant time dealing with any of the four banks that are here for one major reason, and Ann touched on it at the very beginning of her comments. Real people answer the phone. So Mr. Al, the hardware man, calling for his $100,000 or $50,000 loan is going to call one of these four institutions. A real person is going to answer the phone, and they're going to direct you, hand you off personally to that person that will then make it their business to make sure that Al gets his $100,000 loan.
But see, that seems more along the lines I would think people in our town, that they're borrowing 50, 100 grand, not
Correct.
5 million.
Sure.
Right, and no matter what the size is, whether it's 50,000 or 5 million, I think the bigger part of it is that when you're working with, the lending teams or your lender at your local community bank, they understand the community and the environment in which you operate. And they, understand, let's say that some big business had layoffs or something that impacted you as a small business person. We understand those things where you truly are treated like, you've got to fit the square peg round hole when you're working with some of the bigger banks. If you don't meet the requirements of, the round hole, you're not
worth my time.
You're not worth my time, and you will be pushed off to an 800 call center and completely online automated.
I'm back to the
data
Philippines.
processing.
I've never
You
been
are.
to the Philippines, but I
You've been
think
there
I've
twice
taught.
in this conversation.
It's funny, I keep looking at the Philippines over here and thinking, oh, that's
Now,
where the calls are going.
There you go. Interestingly enough, one perception. you're more expensive than the big banks, aren't you? Because they've got lots more money.
Couldn't be farther from the truth. When you look at, and we do look at, how are any kind of service fees might compare, I will bet your bottom dollar that all of us in this room, our fees are significantly less than any of the big banks, significantly less. And because we really value the relationship. They've got to charge for the transactions. We value the relationship. We're looking to grow that relationship. To, if you are a small business owner, to not only be helped to help you with, your deposit needs, your payroll needs, your credit card processing needs. We want to help you with your family's business. We want to help you with your succession planning. We want to help you with your life insurance and disability insurance. We want to help you with all of it. And we value that. So, it's not about the single transaction and having to make money on one checking account. We're looking at the whole picture.
Yeah. At Dean Bank, not only do we look at fees very carefully, but we'll also look at interest rates, because that ties into your conversation.
Well, that's my
about not just
question. Do I
fees.
get
Right.
better interest
Yeah.
rates if I
So-
get a big bank?
So I think we've all said it. You're going to get a much more pleasant experience, even from an interest rate perspective. Speaking from Dean Bank, once a week we look over a report that has about 16 of the area financial institutions, which includes the big guys, all of the four of us that are sitting here, and maybe a few others, just to make sure that our deposit rates for CDs and our loan rates for auto loans and mortgages and business loans, et cetera, that we're pricing them as competitively as we absolutely can, because we do value that individual, one relationship at a time. That is really our mantra.
Now, I remember when we bought our first boat, we were in Washington, and I couldn't get a loan from any of the Milford banks because they didn't do loans in
The
D.C.
collateral was not in the
Oh,
area.
whatever it was,
Yep.
they couldn't do it. So I went out to Riggs Bank. There was a bank there. I took a mortgage on my boat. I think within 2 years, I got bills from 3 different banks. I don't know.
Yeah, mortgage was sold probably, or the loan
Whatever it
itself
was,
sold,
all of a
right.
sudden there's some bank in San Diego saying, we now own your mortgage, you pay us now. Now, when I did my home mortgage, I never changed. P.O. Box B got my check all the time. But I'm assuming that you must have sold my mortgage, or you must sell the mortgages.
necessarily.
No?
Not necessarily.
Well, why do they do it? Because that was annoying to keep constantly getting new book. Back then, the old days, Paul Revere delivered the book to my house, so every month I'd fill it in.
It gets back to economies of scale. It gets back to what is their priority. And I think we've heard the recurring theme that the relationships matter here. So there's a higher likelihood, certainly, I don't want to speak for the other 3 members of the panel, but there's a much higher likelihood that any loan that's originated at a Dean Bank or any of their banks is going to stay at that bank. And in the unlikely event, or in the event that perhaps a mortgage was sold, that we're going to retain the servicing so that we can continue that relationship seamlessly.
See, I guess I don't necessarily care if you sell my loan. As long as I've got the same address, the same terms,
Right.
and the same people to call if
Continuity,
I had a
consistency.
question.
Right.
So in most cases, you all keep the servicing of loans?
Generally speaking, we keep
Yes.
the servicing.
Yeah, most banks will give you the opportunity to, again, it comes down to meeting the need of the individual. Most banks will sell a portion of the loan and still keep the servicing aspect of it. That being said, there's a lot of different demographics out there that use these services. Some people don't ever step foot in the branches anymore because they do all their technology and all their banking online. So to some people, that may not be as important as to others. So for that reason, banks try to offer a mix of different products and services to make sure that they're meeting the needs of different segments within the market.
Yes, my darling bride reminded me when I went down to Route 109 because I needed cash. The door doesn't open anymore. How do I get to that ATM machine? I looked in the door and it's not there. Then I find out it's around back. She goes, how many years has it been since you've come in here? I said, oh, I guess it's been a while. But it was still there and I could get the money I needed. You know, so, you know, when I look at it, question comes up is, are the rates the same? And you're saying that I'll get the same rate at a community bank that I'll get from the big banks.
Maybe even a little bit better.
Yeah, I think
Really?
Yeah, I think we're competitive, all of us.
Well, I would think you'd have to be, wouldn't you?
And particularly on the deposit side, our deposit rates are so much more competitive than the larger banks. I think when you're talking about mortgages, we're all kind of more in a tight arena there because of the secondary market in which mortgages are sold.
You have to sell into.
So I think that you would find a much closer range between us and bigger banks on the loan side, but on the deposit side, we really do a lot better
And
for
on
our
consumer
customers.
loans, probably, I think community banks, generally speaking, for auto loans and loans of that type, we're going to be much more competitive. A lower interest rate on a car loan.
Really?
Yeah, I know at our rates, the rates that we start at for auto loans are exceptionally competitive. So.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the things to keep in mind is banks like Unibank, banks like, you know, the other banks in the, you know, in the market that are community banks aren't necessarily publicly traded. So there's a big difference between a bank that is traded publicly because when you are traded in the public market, you're kind of at the mercy of the stockholder.
Well,
so
I want my
margins-
dividends.
Well, of course, you want dividends, you want, you know.
You, the stockholder, want
Yeah,
want
me, the
dividends.
stockholder.
But you, the customer, at the same
I don't want to pay for dividends.
That's correct.
Right.
So, you know, so most of our, you know, for example, Unibank is a mutual holding company bank. So what that means is that we're really owned by our customers as opposed to owned by a shareholder or a group of shareholders. So we don't have to pay anybody dividends. We don't have to pay anybody, you know, for stock growth. So really, you know, we can maintain those controls a little bit tighter so that we can make sure that we're meeting the needs of our customers with comparable rates in the market. You know, so it helps cut down some of that cost associated with managing a public bank.
Well, I could see if I'm a private company and I decide this is best for my long-term relationship with my customers, maybe I give up a little this quarter. But if I'm a stock-bearing company, I want my dividend.
Right.
I don't know you from a hole in the wall. You don't do anything for me, Mr. Big Bank, except grow your stock value and pay me my dividends.
Right.
Right.
So from that end, I can understand it.
Yeah, we don't have to meet, you know, this quarter's numbers by whatever means we have to. We can take a longer look out at what our strategic plan is and how we best serve our community.
Profitability is still important. The bank needs to keep the lights on. We need to grow. We need to.
You have employees, I bet, like I do, that are very, very demanding. I mean, they want to feed their families. They want to clothe their
How
families.
dare they?
You know?
So the bank needs certainly, all of these banks need to certainly turn a profit. We need to remain profitable so that we can remain a member and a partner of the community. But we are not beholden to that stockholder. Our business model is completely different. We're traveling in a different lane, if you will, on the highway. We're all on the financial services highway, but we're deliberately and intentionally traveling in a different lane.
Now, if I think about your banks, how big, I mean, how many employees or, you know, compared to, I think of a Citibank or a Chase, I can't even imagine how many tens of thousands of minions they have,
Right.
you know, or how many billions they're managing.
We have no minions, I can tell you that. We have, Dean Bank is a little over $300 million in assets, or 320, I believe, 322 as of today. We have about 75 employees over 4 towns.
And we're $250 million in assets, and we have 49 employees, and we don't count the 15 high school kids as official employees, although some of them actually are counted in that because they work for us on Thursdays and Saturdays, but the 15 students
I
at the high
bet they
school
count
do.
it. I mean, the kids who used to work, you know, at the banks.
Of course.
Now you have
That's how I started.
well, let me finish. How big is Unibank?
Unibank is about 1.8 billion. So it sounds a lot bigger than some of my colleagues here. But the reason for that is Unibank actually has a very unique arm of its mutual holding company that deals specifically with managing municipalities. So approximately 80% of the towns in Massachusetts actually do their business with Unibank because we have a very specific product that's designed to work with municipalities and small businesses.
So you're like a bunch of little banks all together.
No, we're really just, we're a community bank, but we also have an arm that deals with municipalities.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You've got the community bank
Right.
piece.
Yep.
And then you have the municipality over.
Yeah. And it's, at the end of the day, we're, the 1.8 billion, the municipalities account for a good portion of that. We have 13 branches located throughout Worcester County, in the Blackstone, greater Blackstone area. And we have, approximately 250 employees. When you consider that there's 13 locations throughout the area, they all have to be staffed right. We have 2 different commercial centers, one out of Worcester and one out of Whitensville, which is really where the bank was founded. So, it seems like we're a larger bank, but at the end of the day, we're still, just community within this, the Worcester County and the greater Blackstone Valley.
Do I dare ask you how big Milford Fed is?
We have $110 all coming from your family. I started with the bank back in November, and as far as the number of people, I have to say we have a branch at Milford High School. We have 2 branches in Milford, a branch in Whitensville and a branch in Woonsocket, and then we have the main office. And I know
And you're about the same size as the others.
Exactly. And the thing for me is still being new, because it's small. I came from a bigger bank. I'm not going to mention any names. I know everybody's name at the company that I work for. That's huge. I don't know. You talk to people that have worked at other big banks for a long time, and they can't say that they know.
Now, both of
everybody
you
else's
mentioned
names.
you got a bank inside the high school?
Yeah.
What's
Yes.
that about? I mean, I saw the Milford Fed one when I was going in to a special needs dance.
Aw.
And I looked over and it's like, what's that?
I can say at Milford High School they have a course that's built around the branch. It's on business. The students have to actually interview to get into the program, which is really kind of a neat thing. But it's a full service branch. The students wait on it. We do have a few students that work for us in the branch. One is a senior at Hopedale High School, and she does a great job. She works part-time. So talk about investing into the community. These are kids that, if they like banking and they like being in business, we've given them a reason to continue on in the finance industry or do anything. And we're giving them a chance to work in the bank, too.
And it's great.
And you have one in Medway?
We have one in Medway High School, and it's a great opportunity for the students to really understand how real business functions. They're trained. They go through all of the same regulatory training that we do. And our students also are part of the Mass School Bank Association, so they get together once a year and compete with about 26 other schools who also have school banking offices, and they compete in 3 different programs. There's kind of like a general banking knowledge, almost like a Jeopardy kind of program, except it's got banking information. They compete in a marketing contest where they arrive, a team of five people will be chosen they get a topic and they have to create a marketing campaign within like 15, 20 minutes and present it in front of people at the Federal Reserve. And another group does product development where they get information in advance and have to create a product to solve whatever problem it is, and present that again at the Federal Reserve Bank, and they compete against 26 other students. We direct our scholarship money to the students either in our high school program or high school students that work in our branch. And it's a great source for us to bring people into the banks. We've had a number of students over the past 12 or 13 years that we've had the program that they stay with us when they go to college. They'll work the vacations and summers, and then they've come to work with us afterwards. And so they come in graduating from college with 6 or 7 years of work experience
Wow.
with us already. So it's been great.
Now, I know every year you look in the paper and you'll see that some of the local banks will publish the pictures of kids that they've given scholarships to. How does that work?
We, speaking for Dean Bank, we offer scholarships to graduating seniors one scholarship from each school in our branch towns. Now, Franklin, for example, has 2 schools. They have Franklin High School and then they have Tri-County. So we give 1 scholarship to each of those schools. And in Mendon, you have Nipmuc Regional as well as Blackstone Valley Tech. So we offer there. So they apply. There's some criteria that's applied. An essay has to be written. There's a committee that sort of sifts through them all, and with help from the guidance department. The guidance counselor will sort of assess the financial need, if you will, and the academic performance, and so we'll come up with a recipient from each town.
And again, we direct our scholarships to the students that participate in either the high school branch program at Medway High School or that are from other high schools that work for us in our branches. There is an application, they do need to write an essay, and we evaluate that, and depending on the applications that we get every year, we may give 3 scholarships, we may do 4, we may give a really large one. It really depends on any given year what the applicants submit to us.
We do the same thing, the same application process, but we do it the same thing. We one scholarship per school in our area, which is a great opportunity for the kids. Essays, same thing, same process.
One of the interesting things about the scholarships is sometimes these kids, at times, we'll have them come in, and it's almost like the first time they've ever had to interview for something in their career, in their life. So it's kind of interesting to hear these kids talk about, some of their experiences. Unibank does the same thing throughout our towns, from all the 13 branches that we have. So, we don't have any branches in the schools. We do have partnerships with a lot of the schools to be able to allow some of those kids to work during their their weeks. For example, at Blackstone Valley, we have kids that come in on their trade week and they work at the branch. So it's another way to allow some of these kids an introduction into finance and banking. I think some of them still believe that we do have a vault back there where all the cash.
That's my box. It's a little one, but it's got my $110 in it.
That's right.
I know.
You're not supposed to tell anybody how much I have in the bank.
110, right?
Yeah.
I know when I started, that was exactly what I thought. I thought, oh, geez, there's got to be a box back there with my name on it, and every dollar I put in, it goes in there. But them working in the bank and seeing that is actually one of the first times that they realize that that's not the case. And I think many of us participate in financial literacy programs that teach kids a lot of these really interesting things about finance that they're not going to learn outside of school. Right. How to write a check, how to manage credit. The importance of credit, and how to save. So a lot of our these community banks in the area, I think, focus on teaching these kids, how to run their finances, because it's not something that's necessarily taught in school. So
it's funny because, oh God, too many years ago. Now it's 20-some years ago. I read an article how kids get to college, get their first credit cards, and freak out and max it.
Yeah.
So when my daughters were 11, I handed them an ATM card and a credit card and said, here you go. You get to abuse it once and you lose it. And it was funny because when they got to college, they had had a credit card for 7 years.
So they're familiar with it.
It was no big deal. They didn't have to run out and spend it.
And it's great to be able to start those habits when they're young. Charles River Bank, we're in the Medway public school systems and the Mendon Upton public school systems, working with the children from age kindergarten through middle school. We've got the branch in the high school. So we're there every week, encouraging the kids to save. They have their savings accounts. And then, as Ellen had said, we go into the schools to present so many financial literacy programs. It's really important because there are many students where they don't have that, and I think teachers are now realizing the importance of that. And we've been contacted within the past year by a number of school systems where they're looking for us to really come in, 4 times in the next month to talk to these XYZ classes.
Well, I think it's great because
amount of time.
Right now, most of these private schools are 60-some thousand plus. I remember graduating Holy Cross back in '78 thinking, how could my parents pay $6,200? You know what I mean? Mom worked at Draper's as a drill press operator. My father had the big job at General Motors, making $18,000 a year. But still, for them to come up with $6,000 a year amazed me.
Yeah.
Now it's 68,000.
Sure. But you know, there's something very interesting about what we're all talking about right here with regards to financial literacy. I teach it myself in a few schools in the area, Franklin and Bellingham. Financial literacy, the safe and effective use of money, is one of the few things in life that is 100% applicable to every student graduating, whether they go in the military, whether they go right to work after high school, whether they go to a trade school, a 2-year college, a 4-year college, or do nothing. Becoming an adult, turning 18, reaching that age of majority, it becomes instantly applicable to every single young person
Sure.
graduating. So it's fundamental to their existence. They need to understand, whether they learn the hard way or through one of our programs. And the unfortunate part, at least right now anyways, I know Massachusetts is trying to build something permanent into the curriculum, but there isn't anything right now.
No.
So it's very patchwork. And once again, the community banks, and I'm going to get on my soapbox here for a minute and get a little passionate, because you mentioned the bigger guys, what they do and what they don't do. You don't see those institutions investing in the future customers, because that's ultimately what they are. They're young people who need to use finances effectively and safely, whether they do it for one of us or any of the other guys.
Yeah, but if you don't care about the people, well, then let them ring up. I mean, my credit card, I've never paid any interest because I pay it off the day I get it. But the interest
You're
rates...
the exception, though, on that.
But I was saying, the
But-
interest rate's got to be some ginormous 16, 18%.
Right.
Probably
And it's
higher.
irrelevant
Sometimes
to-
higher,
yeah,
yes.
And I'm
sometimes.
scared to death that if I start, it's like an opioid. If I start down that train, how will you ever get out of it? So if you can teach the kids, it's bad enough they've got to come up with $60,000 a year just to be in school. But then blowing up a credit card at whatever percent that's ungodly just has got to be a terrible hole to try and dig out of.
Yeah,
Right, and
financial
when they're
literacy,
carrying
yeah.
a balance and you go out with your friends for a pizza and some sodas, that $50 that you just added into your credit card
Right.
can end up costing you $500 by the time you pay it off. I mean,
Instant gratification for the
right,
kids
it's-
with the plastic.
See, I took care of money management. I got married. Married with kids, I have no money. So simple.
Yeah, financial management and literacy, though, really doesn't know any bounds. It applies to everybody, regardless of whether you came from a family that was struggling to make ends meet or one that, had little issues with money. It doesn't matter. At the end of
Yeah,
the
but
day,
it's only 1% that can really say I can spend what I want and there's no downside. 99% of us.
right, but understanding, how money works, how credit works is fundamental to being able to, manage your life, really, at the end of the day, because everything revolves around something, with finance.
But even the discipline spreads. If you can practice good financial discipline, then you practice good time discipline. Good, it's a great concept, and I tip my hat.
Pays, pardon the pun, but it pays dividends in many areas of a young person's life. You're absolutely right.
Now, one of the things that people worry about, security. I mean, I've had 3 credit cards in 4 years because they call me and say, somebody spent $600 in Chicago on my credit card. Well, none of us were in Chicago, so we decided we needed our money more than they did. They canceled my credit card. Do you offer the same level of security as the big guys?
Of course.
absolutely.
We say, of course, I don't know.
It comes down to knowing your customer. If your customer all of a sudden, to your point, swipes out in Chicago or Moscow for that matter, it's going to trigger a red flag in our systems and let us know, is Al really in Chicago or Moscow? Why don't we call him and ensure
So
that
Marie and crew would know, yeah, he travels a lot. That's probably okay.
Right.
Right.
And like I said earlier, we ask that you let us know when you're going to be
Sure.
traveling. And if you don't, we all have security procedures in place where if you're having a transaction that's not typical to what you normally do, we're going to try to reach out to you, and if we can't reach out to you, as a precaution, we're going to stop your card so no one else can do anything additional with it.
And I'll say what I said earlier in this program. Financial technology has leveled the playing field for the smaller institutions. Currently, it's very safe to say that all 4 of these institutions here have very similar safeguards. Technology in place that alerts us in real time when somebody's debit card is being used fraudulently, algorithms that are in place that, and then certain actions will take place, whether it's you've requested to receive a text alert, or at Dean Bank we have an app, it's a free app, that allows you to get notifications whenever your card is used. Hopefully it's when your card is in your hand. There are controls that you can turn on and turn off your debit card. You can use it only at certain geographic locations or a variety of things, spending limits. So technology has really made it, I don't want to say easy for us, but easier to offer any of those services that the larger institutions have.
Now, when I was down in D.C., the Baltimore area, back then when Bank of Baltimore existed, they had private banking people.
We're all private bankers.
Well, I was going to say, I haven't ever been offered private banking here, but
It's just what we do.
I was going to say, I never felt I needed it here.
It's a high level of service, meeting the needs that you have, whether, and I think part of that I mentioned earlier is assurance that your bank can get something done. We have the technology, so we have that assurance. We have that that responsiveness when something triggers that you're transacting in another country or another city that may not necessarily be within our geographic areas. So I think at the end of the day, it's about service. Private banking is about service, and I think Unibank, much like I'm sure my colleagues here, all pride themselves in a level of service that I can equate to private banking.
You walk into the branch and everybody knows your name.
Right.
It's like Cheers.
Right.
Everyone says hi to you. So we know, I always we know your story. So you can just walk in there and feel like everybody that's sitting there is your private banker because we can help you. We're from the area, you're from the area. It's not like, and sometimes those private banking services cost customers money. That can sometimes happen.
Oh, yeah.
too.
Oh yeah.
Nothing came for free.
Right.
I see my customers every time I go to the grocery store.
Right. Exactly. No matter where you go, you can't just, you run into everyone
See them
everywhere.
at the gym, you see them everywhere because we all live in the communities that we actually work in.
Any last message you want to leave with the community?
Well, I would like to say that, at Charles River Bank, we truly believe that, a vibrant community, vibrant businesses, vibrant families that are living there, that we're there to help make that happen. And it's, we try to support our communities in so many ways. And it's really important for people living in our communities to think about that and say, why am I banking with a big bank? What am I really getting from that relationship? And to really, I would really ask people to give your community bank an opportunity for that business.
Yeah.
Shop local.
Yeah, what they said, times 4. Unibank, Milford Fed, Charles River, Dean Bank. We're here.
Well, I certainly see your names across grandchildren, neighbors, when they're playing any youth sports. I certainly see your name in the thank you section of plays and all sorts of other community events. So from a few of us that live in the center of the universe, thank you. And as always,
Thank you for having us, Al. Appreciate
we
it.
thank our 6 loyal viewers for joining us. I couldn't agree more than to say bank local, shop local, help your fellow Milfordians and Medwayans and Franklin.
Mendonites.
Mendonites. I couldn't think of what they call the people from Mendon, but as always, thanks. May God bless, and may tomorrow be a safer and better night than tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not too long since I've been home.